Today, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful and, most difficult books ever written, Immanuel Kant's Critique of Pure Reason. The ideas in here didn't just change philosophy, they totally rewired how we think about knowledge, reality, and even ourselves. And it all kicks off with one simple, mind-bending question.
Okay, so just for a second, think about the world around you. The light hitting your eyes, the sounds you're hearing, the feeling of the chair you're sitting in. Now, Kant wants us to consider a really radical idea. What if none of that is a direct window into reality? What if it's all a construction, a story that's being told to you by the very machinery of your own mind?
To really get Kant's genius, we have to rewind the clock a bit and look at the huge philosophical mess he was trying to clean up. You see, before Kant, the whole search for truth had basically hit a dead end.
At the time, philosophy was pretty much split into two warring camps. On one side, you had the rationalists. They believed that we could figure out the deepest truths of the universe just by using pure logic and reason. But on the other side, you had the empiricists. They argued, no, we're all born as blank slates. All real knowledge has to come from our senses, from what we actually see, hear, and touch.
So this debate just raged on and on until a Scottish philosopher named David Hume came along and dropped an absolute bombshell. He made an argument so powerful, so devastating, it threatened to pull the rug out from under everything, especially science.
So what was this bombshell? Well, Hume pointed out something that's actually really simple when you think about it. He said, we never actually see cause and effect. We see one thing happen, and then we see another thing happen. We see the fire, and then we feel the metal get hot. And our mind just automatically links them, right? We assume the fire caused the heat. But all we ever really truly perceive is one event following another. That's it.
And that leads to a pretty chilling thought. If cause and effect is just a story we tell ourselves, a habit of our mind, and not something that's actually real out in the world, then what is science built on? Are the laws of physics, the very foundation of our understanding of the universe, just an illusion?
This exact problem is what Kant himself said woke him from his dogmatic slumber. Hume's argument was the spark. Kant knew that if he was going to save science, if he was going to save knowledge itself, he had to start from scratch and rethink everything. And this brings us to Kant's incredible solution, something he called a Copernican Revolution in philosophy. You know how Copernicus flipped our whole view of the solar system by putting the sun at the center? Well, Kant was about to do the exact same thing for our understanding of reality.
See, for centuries, everyone just assumed that our minds were like passive cameras, just recording a reality that was already out there. Kant flipped that script completely. He said, what if we've got it backward? What if for us to even experience an object, the object has to conform to the built-in rules of our mind?
Let that really sink in for a second. You are not just a passive observer of the universe. You are an active participant in building your reality. Your mind isn't just watching the movie. It's providing the screen, the projector, and the very rules that make the movie make sense.
So, if our mind has this blueprint for reality, what does it actually look like? Well, Kant's model starts by splitting reality into two very different realms.
He called them the phenomenal and the noumenal worlds. The phenomenal world is basically everything we can ever experience, everything we see, hear, taste, and touch. It's the world of appearances, all filtered and organized by our mind. But behind that, there's the noumenal world, the thing in itself, which is reality as it truly is, totally independent of our minds.
And this right here is where Kant's idea gets truly profound and honestly a little bit unsettling. That noumenal world, reality as it actually is something we can never ever directly know. We are, in a very real sense, locked inside the operating system of our own perception. We can know the world as it appears to us, but the thing in itself will always be beyond our reach.
So how does our mind build this phenomenal world? Kant said we're all born with a kind of mental toolkit. First, all raw data from our senses gets filtered through two fundamental forms of intuition, space and time. These aren't things that exist out there. They're more like the grid paper of our perception. And then our mind uses what he called the categories of understanding. These are built-in concepts, like causality, for example. These categories are like software that automatically sorts all that data into the coherent, structured world we know.
And this whole model is what finally allowed Kant to solve Hume's big problem. He did it by identifying a brand new type of knowledge he called synthetic a priori. Now, I know that sounds complicated, but let's just break it down. A priori just means knowledge you have before any experience. and synthetic means it's knowledge that adds new information. So this is new information about the world that we somehow know is true without ever having to test it. How is that even possible? Well, Kant's go-to example was math. Think about the statement 7 plus 5 equals 12. The concept of 12 isn't just hiding inside the definition of 7 or 5. It's genuinely new information, so it's synthetic. But you don't need to go out and test it by counting apples to know it's true. You just know it with absolute certainty in your mind. It's a priori. And why? Because concepts like numbers and rules like causality are part of our mind's built-in toolkit. They are the rules of the game. And this is how Kant saved science. The laws of science can be certain because they're really just describing the very structure of our own experience.
But Kant wasn't just interested in what we can know. He was also focused on drawing a very clear line around what we cannot know. He argued that whenever our reason tries to step beyond the world of possible experience, beyond the phenomenal, it just ties itself in knots.
He called these knots the antinomies of reason. Take this for example. You can use perfectly good logic to prove that the universe must have had a beginning in time. But you can also use equally good logic to prove that it must be eternal, with no beginning at all. For Kant, the fact that reason can prove two completely opposite things just shows that the question itself is out of bounds for us. It's a question about that noumenal world, where our minds just can't go.
And this means that all those timeless, grand questions of metaphysics, about God, about an immortal soul, about free will, are ultimately beyond what our reason can prove. They belong to that noumenal realm. Now, Kant's point wasn't that these things aren't real. His point was that you can have faith, you can have belief, but you can never have scientific knowledge of them.
So what's the ultimate takeaway here? Why does this one single book matter so much even today? Well, it's because Kant didn't just give us a new answer. He completely changed the question.
Before Kant came along, the main question in philosophy was basically, what is reality like? But after Kant, the central question of philosophy became, how does my mind create the reality I experience? This single shift set the course for pretty much all of modern philosophy that followed. Thinkers like Hegel, Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, they all had to play on the field that Kant had just redrawn.
And this isn't just some old, dusty philosophy. Kant's central idea that our brain actively constructs reality instead of just passively observing it is a cornerstone of modern cognitive science and psychology. We know now that our brains are constantly filtering, interpreting, and literally building the world we perceive moment to moment. Kant figured this out over 200 years ago just by thinking.
In the end, what Kant gave us is a really profound and kind of humbling insight. The search for knowledge isn't just about exploring the world out there. It's also about exploring the inner architecture of the mind that makes it possible to have a world at all. The reality you inhabit, the world you are experiencing this very second, might just be the one your own mind has made visible for you.